Yes?
Epilogue. What?
Can't see why I'd want to do that here. Yes. For freedom.
Looking fierce today, Exile.
May your maps be merciful.
That is indeed an upgrade.
Still sane, Exile? Look around you, Exile.
My mana is gone.
Oh, what the fuck, dude?
That would only slow me down.
I don't think I can. I did so much damage. Okay. Okay. What happened?
That would only slow me down.
How fares your... These worlds, they have changed. May your maps be merciful. Need a map? May your maps be merciful.
My mana is gone.
Just in time. Over here, Exile. There's some... I have a... You know, looking at it more closely, you could do with a help.
What? Where'd those guys come from? Okay. Sure. Wow. I guess they do appear randomly. okay? That was not normal. Sucks. Gets harder. It's like corpse explosion type thing.
Glad you made it back. Stay sane.
My mana is gone.
Oh my god, that shit's a one tap. For real. what it is.
My mana is gone.
Dude, I got some good shit here.
Glad you made it back. Stay inquisitive. Need a map? Stay sane. Glad you made
How
it
do I
back.
not have Orb of Chances?
Good luck with your maps.
My mana is gone.
Okay. This is fucking painful.
Need a map? Stay sane.
Yes? For freedom.
I give you to the earth.
That shit hurts like a bitch. Oh my gosh.
My mana is gone.
Go to battle.
Oh my god.
Greetings. Remember, we do this for freedom.
mana is gone.
There's colour. I've a certain pack of... For this hunt, I'm going to share a piece of bushcraft with you. Well, bushcraft smeared with thaumaturgy. The corrupted creatures tend to mark their territory with their foulness. This trick allows you to pick up that scent and follow it home. The whole thing stinks of corruption, I know. But you can't expect to put your nose to the ground without getting it.
My mana is gone.
in time. My mana is gone.
Why are those so fucking expensive? God, that shit hurts like a bitch. Why do you have less? Oh shit. It's an aura. There's gotta be a okay. Never mind on the frost armor. Can it do face run?
Yo, what's up, dude?
Yo. Oh, I'll get to town.
This game's fucking complicated.
Eh. You feel like you're gonna be playing it a little bit longer or no?
Yeah, I like it. I just don't know all of the fucking builds and all this little bullshit. I have no idea. I think I already fucked up and got the wrong stone or the wrong gem in the beginning.
No, you don't really fuck up doing that.
Because I'm trying to do the lightning build and I feel like I fucked it up.
You didn't.
Huh?
You didn't. Use the TP scroll to get to town.
Alright. Let me wipe this fucker out. Yeah, this game's fun. It's more of like a solo player game though. I feel like.
Later on, you need to like be with a squad because it gets hard as fuck.
Really?
You need auras that complement one another, and at the same time, like the DPS guys need to stay DPS, and the tank guys really need to tank.
The fucking well, how's the lightning witch you've been playing? Is she good or no?
I don't even know. I'm guessing she's DPS. You can switch up. You know, you can switch up builds almost like instantly.
Is it free?
Well, there's items that you can find that can switch up your skill tree.
Oh shit! I wasn't paying attention and I died. Fuck me.
Don't worry, it's not worth much if you die.
Alright, I'm in town. I fucking wasn't looking at the fucking thing. Alright, I'm in town right now. I'm in. Fuck, I don't know
I
where
see
I'm.
you. Stop moving.
Hold up, I gotta drop all kinds of shit. Let me start dropping it. Oh, I can't.
What? You don't need any of the shit that you pick up now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Fuck it, I'll just trade it to you so I can get rid of it.
I don't have enough space for all that shit.
Oh, you don't have space for that either? Let me just
Yeah,
toss it out.
dump it.
I'll trade this. Who is that? Is that you glowing right here?
No. I don't glow.
Why does he look all badass, dude?
Probably a skin, man.
Welcome.
Oh, those are all skins?
Yep.
I could buy those?
Uh-huh.
Are they expensive?
Probably not.
And then the selling shit in this game is weird too, because you don't sell for money, you sell for random shit.
Yeah. Those are considered your currency. Like the shit that you can use to alter your items are what we consider currency. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm just trying to stash everything away. Okay. Alright, I'm good. I don't know if you see me, I'm in the middle. That's a badass skin though, I gotta give it to him.
Have you picked up any fusing orbs yet?
I don't even know what that is, dude. So I'm basically all geared out now, huh?
One more thing.
What little help I can offer is yours. Be well.
Are there any like specific gems that you want?
Yeah, I just let me look it up again. It was arc, control destruction, spell echo, added lightning damage.
Arc.
Those are the ones for the chest. Arc, control destruction, spell echo, and then added lightning damage. They're all blue.
Blue. Okay. All right. What's after arc?
Control destruction.
All right. What's after that?
Spell echo.
Ooh, that one's expensive. All right. What's after that?
Added lightning damage. Lightning penetration. Efficiency.
Lightning penetration.
Yeah, I said lightning penetration, and then efficiency as the last one.
All
And
right.
all those are blue. And then these are the boots, but I don't have 4 slots in my boots that are 2 blue and 1 red and 1 green.
You know what the
There's
tabula rasa does, right?
no.
You could put whatever color gems, and they all link.
Uh, yeah, the boots are going to be Orb of Storms. I think I have that one actually.
Wait. Repeat the other ones you said again.
Okay, I have Orb of Storms already. Hold on, let me go back. Okay, so added lightning damage, lightning penetration, and efficiency.
Do I have efficiency? Is that a support gem?
I have no idea.
Efficacy, not efficiency. Butthole. All right. It's. I'm guessing all these are gonna go into your 6 slot, right?
Yep. And the
Alright.
chest.
All right. What did you want for the other thing?
These are for the boots, but I can't put those in the boots. I don't have red and green or blue. It's I already have that one, so I just need Arcane Surge, Increased Duration, and Culling Strike.
Arcane Surge, increase duration. Those are all reds, right? Culling Strike and increased duration.
Yeah. Cast when wait. Yeah, increased duration's red, Culling Strike's green. How are you getting these?
There's a store. All right.
Damn it. Yep. Let me see if I can put them on.
It should go a whole lot faster for you now.
Where do I get like the actual like set pieces? Set pieces.
What means that pieces?
Like chest, helmet,
Huh?
like the chest piece, the fucking
You have to farm for that, bro.
like where I go.
Uh, Everything that you find right now is gonna be useless to you in about 20 minutes.
Really?
Yeah, that's how it's gonna be until you reach about level 70.
Fuck, I'm not level. I gotta be 38 for that one, 18 for that one.
Well, you better start leveling up, homie.
Oh my god, I can't get that one either. Oh, I got that one.
Yeah, you shouldn't have any problems leveling up.
Curse on hit? What is that? That sounds cool.
It's nothing. I probably wouldn't even use that.
I put everything I can put on there.
And try it out.
Hold on. I was looking at the fucking gear. They got some badass looking gear, dude.
It's all probably skins, man.
Mm-hmm. And you can use it over and over, right?
The what?
The skin?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to buy this lightning one. It looks sick. Oh, they got weapon skins too. That's how they make all their money, huh?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see how this looks. Okay.
How'd it go?
I am one-shotting everything. Oh, it's fucking awesome. So don't pick up any of this shit?
Nah. Unless it's
Oh.
like a currency item. Like orb of fusing or any orbs you pick up.
No, running out of mana. Can you still get more orbs or no? Or gems, I mean?
Huh? Yeah.
Shit, if you don't mind. Oh, fuck, hold up. my god, I am fucking destroying.
And you don't even have all the gems yet.
No, I don't have shit. How do I know an item's better?
Huh? Should be able to read.
You can't like tab over it and have like you know how you hold tab or some shit when you used to look at an item and compare them. Oh my god! I one-shotted the whole mob. Here, I'll tell you the rest of the gyms. That way, I can catch up and then put them on as soon as I get there. But there's like dungeons and shit to farm for the specific item, or no?
No.
This thing is so dope. I didn't know you played the shit out of this game, dude.
It was like a week.
Oh, I got me a day, bro. Alright. It's gonna go a lot different now. Fuck, he's one shot. I ran out of mana, you dumb motherfucker. Oh, I'm so mad.
Oh, you got wrecked?
I ran out of mana, and he hit me before I hit him, basically. What happened? Fuck you, man. I got the goat's horn, though, as a wand. Scroll of Wisdom. 7 of 13. Increase spell damage by 10. 9. Okay, let me show you what. Let me see what the other gyms are. Okay, ready?
Yep.
Arcane Surge, increased duration,
Already
and
got
colon.
those.
You got those already?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, those are probably the ones I can't wear. All right. Let's see. Yep. Nope. Okay. Okay. These first three are red. Last one's blue. Cast when damage taken, increased duration, immortal call, and enfeeble. You know what? I'll just fucking think.
You're probably gonna find those, man.
Yeah, I don't know any of this shit. I have no idea. This is it right here, though. I linked it to you. Oh, I had to wear that ring now. Nope, that was 16. Fuck. Yeah, this game's addicting, dude.
Jada. Thought for a moment I was going to play a lone man. Any moment now, this voice will be the corrupted, following the effects of the force, nothing hope you could listen. Glory to the pure in mercy. No, tomorrow. I think you're saving this. You.
Yeah, I hear you, dude.
You level up?
Yeah, I'm 14, I think. No, 15.
Oh, damn.
A lost spirit return, feast with the ancestors, and be born once more. Cartery way. Speak again when next come. There is much we might yet share, my ally.
Shit's loud as fuck.
Yeah. I'm level 15 now.
Let's see.
I am now 16.
God damn.
So here's the thing. I'm actually closer to my retirement days than I am my college days. I just want to know, am I going to be okay?
I know people who specialize.
Oh, you know what? I
Be
think I
okay.
can put that ring on now.
You may need glasses, though.
Schedule a complimentary goal planning session with TD Ameritrade.
Fucking dungeons. Trying to get the fuck out of here.
Opportunities are all about finding the right moment. That's why you need Nadex. Short-term trading, active markets, risk that you define. Nadex. Trading for the way you
I hate how everything's
Well, how much
so
stock do you put
dark.
in these reports, given some of the rumors that we've seen
Can't
over the
fucking
last several
see
months
shit.
that John Kelly is on his way out?
Yeah, I think it's been clear for some time now that Trump and Kelly don't get along particularly well, and I think it's clear that Trump has been sounding people out that he trusts, looking for a new option as a chief of staff. As far as the exact date of Kelly's departure, I'm not sure that I put much stock in the reports that it could be as soon as this month. In general, Trump takes a while to make these kinds of personnel changes. So, I wouldn't be surprised if it takes longer than these reports have it. But the general idea of Kelly not being a close advisor to Trump at this point, I think rings true.
How significant a departure would this be? I mean, you know, they haven't seen eye to eye recently, but there was a period where he really was one of his closest advisors, was seen as pivotal in some of his issues. How significant would his exit be?
Yeah, I think it's still very significant given the role of the White House Chief of Staff and the important role that they play generally in the policy coordination process. But you know, Trump is an unusual president in a lot of ways, but this is one of them. I mean, he doesn't really function very well as a chief of staff, I don't think. The notion that his advisors are trying to limit him or force him in a specific direction is something that he really resents. So, you know, Kelly his position has really been downgraded over the last few months. I think since March or so, he really has ceased to be a major gatekeeper in the Trump White House.
So some of the names that have been floated around that could be a possible replacement, we mentioned Nick Ayers, Mick Mulvaney as two names. Does that suggest to you that there could be any kind of policy pivot as it relates to some of the key issues like immigration or trade, given what you pointed out, which is that we know President Trump at the end of the day is going to go with what he believes is the right policy as opposed to what some of his closest advisors say?
Right, and I think that's the key. Regardless of the policy opinions of those two, who you know, they each have their own background, but are generally, you know, conservative figures. Ayers is much closer to Vice President Mike Pence, but I think the point that you raised is the vital one, which is that if you want to remain in this job for very long, I think both of them understand, and any other contender would understand as well, that it behooves you to get behind what the president wants and help him implement that, rather than to try to change his mind about what the best course is.
If you can only travel suffering from motion sickness or feeling drowsy from motion sickness relief, then wanting to stay home is only natural. Fortunately, there's non-drowsy naturals, Dramamine's first non-drowsy offering, the proven natural ginger dosage required for preventing and treating nausea and vomiting due to motion sickness without drowsiness. That's how to travel. Non-drowsy naturals, from the leaders in motion sickness relief, Dramamine.
Wow, what a week for the Trump White House in so many ways. Anthony Scaramucci, former White House communications director and founder of Skybridge Capital. Where to begin? I mean, there is a lot that has happened this week.
My heart, your heart, all of our hearts go out to the families, and it's just an unspeakable tragedy. But same time, you have to admire the resilience of all of these people who actually put the paper out, too. I mean, it's just an amazingly sad story, but a lot of resilience there.
Indeed it is. And, you know, there's been so much discussion about journalism and about fake news. There was a Reuters editor who had to issue an apology because he made a horrible remark initially after, you know, citing some blame for the president, which is just awful. I mean, before anybody even knew anything about the circumstances here. So, I mean, that's kind of the world that we live in right now, unfortunately.
It's the world we live in, but I also think we have to try to figure out how we're going to reduce these shootings. And so, I mean, it's not even a left or right decision anymore. It's just what are the right or wrong policies to put in place to see if we can get a reduction in these shootings. And so, you know, for me, it's obviously a mental health issue. If you look at the person and you look at what people were saying about the person, we just have to work on the signaling on this stuff and get it right, because
I mean, when you have an editor who's given a picture to the security guy, there needs to be a way to draw a circle around that person and make sure that that those red flags go up before something like this happens.
And politicizing it, Martha, is not going to help the situation. You know, bringing the president into the orbit of the thing is not fair to the president. It's also not fair to the situation. And so I'm glad that guy walked it back.
Let's go through some of what happened this week. Obviously, news that a lot of people were not expecting. Justice Anthony Kennedy stepping down from the bench. The president has now said that he's going to have his nominee ready by July 9, which is a week from Monday. It's a short time frame. He says he's got 5 people in mind. 2 of them are women. Do you know who he's going to pick?
Yeah, I don't 100% know who he's going to pick. I know the family seems to be close to a few of these guys, so we'll have to see what happens. But the president picked a great jurist last time. Justice Gorsuch is a phenomenal jurist. He'll pick a phenomenal jurist this time. What I definitely think people should just relax for a second and give him the opportunity to pick somebody before they start digging trenches again. You know, so this it's sort of weird. You know, I was thinking about Justice Scalia. We were talking about him earlier today. It was 97-0. Justice Scalia was appointed to the Supreme Court. And so we're in a situation now where it goes right down the partisan lines. You had to go into the nuclear option for this situation. But in the meantime, if you think about the quality of the people that the president is going to pick from an interview, these are all exceptional Americans, exceptional people. And so I just hope we can just dial it back a little on the polemics, if you will.
So in terms of the White House, the chief of staff, yesterday he made comments. Basically, Kellyanne Conway came out. You know, we have no indication that John Kelly is considering leaving the White House. Tonight, it sounded like the president kind of opened that door a little bit to that possibility.
Well, listen, I think it's ultimately the president's choice, and so obviously, if Chief of Staff Kelly wants to leave, he can leave voluntarily. But it's going to be up to the two of them. We can sit here and speculate about that. But I mean, you know,
what I hope Hicks might come back.
What I tell you, I'm not in love with, and I'll continue to say this, I'm not in love with the leaking. You know, John Kelly deserves the opportunity to have that conversation with the president, and it deserves to stay inside of that circle. And so I just find it ironic that every time something super sensitive is happening one way or the other, it ends up dispersing from the White House in this sort of ridiculous anonymous way. So I'm not totally in love with that.
There's a lot of people there who like to talk, as you know.
And
that's what's happening
anonymously. They run out, they get their cell phone out of the locker, and they run outside, and they like chitter-chattering, and it's sort of not fair. And so, you know, I have had issues with General Kelly in the past. He's had issues, obviously, with me. But I think he's owed the respect, frankly, of having that conversation with the president. He's been a decorated veteran. He served his country well, and he should be able to leave gracefully.
All right. I want to play something for you, because watch the contrast between what President Trump said yesterday when he was at Foxconn in Wisconsin and what some of his critics are saying about what they hope will happen to the economy. Watch this.
America is open for business more than it has ever been open for business. It's made in the USA. It's all happening, and it's happening very, very quickly.
If a recession hits.
You think that's where bottom falls out?
I think so.
I feel like the bottom has to fall out at some point. And by the way, I'm hoping for it, because I think one way you get rid of Trump is a crashing economy.
Fabulous, right? Hoping for recession. Hoping for recession.
So, I mean, this is all part of the derangement syndrome that people talk about. Okay, this is the same thing that got the Reuters editor in trouble. They just severely dislike the president. Some of it's more related to his style. It's really not related to the policies, because I challenge, and I'm sure I'll get lit up on Twitter after I say this, but I challenge you to come up with one policy over the last 17 or 18 months that the president has promulgated that has led to a disruption in your life or a lower living standard or some kind of disavow of your quality of life. And the answer is there hasn't been any. So obviously the economy does fall. That will be an issue for all politicians, and it'll be an issue for all companies in America, and that'll be a lot of pain. So I really wish that Bill didn't say that. Having said that, the very good news is the policies have been fantastic. The stimulus has been fantastic as it relates to the tax cuts that they were celebrating earlier today. And I think you're going to see maybe even a 4.5–5% print on GDP for the second quarter. And so the economists at Skybridge think that we've got a very good accelerated quarterly growth going into the end of the year.
And let's play this from the president in the interview that he did with Maria. Just watch this. I want to get your thought on it.
Because we've seen the impact to the economy. What do you want to see happen now? Does the economy need even more stimulus? Are you looking for a phase two?
We're doing a phase two. We'll be doing it probably in October, maybe a little sooner than that. And it'll be more of a middle class. We did a lot for the middle class, but this will be even more aimed at the middle class. One of the things we're thinking about is bringing the 21% down to 20. And then for the most part, the rest of it would go right to the middle class. It's a great stimulus.
Which tax cut is he talking about there?
Right.
21 to 20.
Yeah, that's the corporate tax cut. It's at 21 now. He's talking about possibly bringing it down to 20, which means it probably will happen. But here's the great thing about him, and this will ultimately be his legacy. He recognizes that he has to close the gap here in terms of income spread and helping middle-class families and lower-middle-class families on the campaign. That was his pledge. And it's policies like that that are free market-based in their orientation that are going to get that done more than any other policy. So,
do you think that's an offset for some of the trade issues? If you lower corporate tax rates a little bit further, is that an incentive for companies like Harley-Davidson, for example, to maybe change their mind?
Yeah, on the margin. But I think what's happening is they're jumping the gun on the president. They're missizing his negotiation strategy, and I think he's asking them to be patient. Those allies of ours and also the Chinese know that the trade situation is unbalanced, and they know that he's using that as a cudgel, those tariffs, to bring it down. And I would call on all corporations, large and small, to give the president a little bit of time to watch him work this thing the way he worked the North Korean situation. And so for me, by the end of the year, my guess is he's very close on NAFTA. He's very close on negotiating something with the EU. And I think it's going to be good news for everybody.
It's going to be a big week for Mexico, too. Big election there.
Happy 4th,
Thank
by
you
the way.
very much. Happy 4th to you. Good to see you.
Good
Thanks
seeing
for coming in.
Happy anniversary dinner, darling. Can this much love be cleaned by a little bit of Dawn Ultra? Oh, yeah. One bottle has the grease cleaning power of 3 bottles of this other liquid. A drop of Dawn and grease is gone.
We've got this coming into our newsroom, dueling breaking news stories from specifically the White House. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the Chief of Staff, John Kelly, is expected to leave this summer after 1 year on the job. According to people familiar with the matter, in recent weeks, President Trump has apparently consulted his advisors about a possible replacement for the Chief of Staff. And here are some of the possible replacements. Sources are telling the Journal the 2 front runners for the job are Nick Ayers, who serves as Chief of Staff to Vice President Mike Pence, and Mick Mulvaney, who, as you know, heads the Office of Management and Budget. I'm just keeping an eye on the Dow, up 154 points, because sometimes these pieces of news tend to move the markets, or not. We're watching it. The White House has declined to comment. We do have people close to the White House telling us that Mr. Kelly's departure could come as early as this week, or could follow the president's mid-July trip to Europe.
Fresh out of Sprite! Fresh out of Sprite.
Could White House Chief of Staff John Kelly be on his way out? The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Kelly is expected to leave as early as this summer and that President Trump is consulting with advisors about who should replace him. We have Pra Subramanian and Jen Rogers joining me on set. Jen, I mean, how big of a concern is this? We always talk about instability in the White House, infighting going on with Trump's administration. If we see yet another person leave the White House, this could cause some concern, I would think, for business leaders.
I have no concern over this. I can't believe he has lasted this long. Do you guys remember last summer when he was standing in Trump Tower looking all
he looked
grim?
so dismayed, yes.
During the there's 2 good sides, both sides, a lot of good people speech, and we all thought he was going to be out right away. I think if he makes it to July 31st, good for him. That's a year, and I think it's fine to go out there. Look, I don't think he needs a chief of staff. We've heard this from Steve Bannon. He needs a...
Don't you think that could be a little bit dangerous, though, for him?
I don't think he listens to the chief of staff anyhow, so why does it matter? He's his own man. He's in charge. He likes to operate in a different way. Trump Tower, apparently, you know, when he was in charge there, he'd have, like, his different little heads and go directly to them. I don't think it's a big deal.
I will say that I think it might be a little bit of a concern because it's now going to be the highest turnover of any presidency at this point in modern times. So that's not exactly a good thing.
There's a lot of stuff that's different about this.
True, but you also have this Supreme Court pick coming. There's the shepherding process through all the different committees and people, and you know, I think you need someone like who can kind of run, be your quarterback for that part of the.
Yeah, and Prash, you talk about the fact that Trump has just gone through so many people here. President Obama went through 5 in his 8 years in office, but only 1 served as an interim chief of staff there. So basically he had 4 full-time. President George W. Bush only had 2. So we put it in perspective. I mean, President Trump is kind of rolling through them here. Jen, who do you think could possibly replace John Kelly if we do, in fact, see him
I think the Mulvaney idea is kind of interesting.
They're buddies, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and just in terms of, like, the business world coming off CFPB, I think, but look, I have no idea, really, who they're going to pick. I mean, I read the Journal story, and look, they've got a lot of decisions to be made. They need to figure out this Supreme Court stuff, too, for sure. I'm more interested in who they're going to pick for that, and I think that has business implications as well.
You should do an apprentice style. Pick my
I
POS.
totally think they should.
Yeah.
I think they
could count anything out with his administration. You never know.
Friday, I'm going to announce it on Friday.
People would watch.
Yeah.
And he could take people from all all across the country and see what would happen. I think that it would be a great way to get a populist president to get the population involved.
We'll see. Maybe he's listening to you, Jen. Maybe he'll take your suggestion.
Deshágase de los olores a humedad y el exceso de humedad con Dempred.
Verás, mi closet está lleno de humedad. La ropa empieza a apestar. Dempred se encarga de eso.
Dempred absorbentes de humedad elimina el exceso de humedad que causa olores y dura hasta 60 días.
Very much, everybody. The economy is indeed doing well. 6 months ago, we unleashed an economic miracle by signing the biggest tax cuts and reforms. I have to add the word reform, very important word, but the tax cuts is what got us there, and that's what's really doing it. The biggest tax cuts in American history. Now it's my great honor to welcome you back to the White House to celebrate 6 months of new jobs, bigger paychecks, and keeping more of your hard-earned money where it belongs, in your pocket or wherever else you want to spend it. Before going any further, I'd like to address the horrific shooting that took place yesterday at Capital Gazette newsroom in Annapolis, Maryland. This attack shocked the conscience of our nation and filled our hearts with grief. Journalists, like all Americans, should be free from the fear of being violently attacked while doing their job. To the families of the victims, there are no words to express our sorrow for your loss. Horrible, horrible event, horrible thing happened. And your suffering, we pledge our eternal support. This suffering is so great. I've seen some of the people, so great. My government will not rest until we have done everything in our power to reduce violent crime and to protect innocent life. We will not ever leave your side, so our warmest, best wishes and regrets. Horrific, horrible thing. Thank you. Thank you.
Some trends are so influential they can move entire sectors of the market. Take demographics. Our aging population could impact the performance of all healthcare companies. But selecting precisely which companies will benefit can be challenging. The Healthcare Sector Spider ETF offers the diversification of the entire healthcare sector while minimizing your single stock exposure. The Healthcare Sector Spider, the next chapter in investing. Before investing, consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. Go to sectorspiders.com for prospectus containing this information. Read it carefully.
We begin court this hour at the White House, where the president spoke just a short time ago about immigration, among other things. Trade fears also front and center. Kayla Tausche covering it from the White House today. Kayla.
Hey, Tyler, we are outside the Southwest Gate. Earlier, there was a security situation on the north lawn of the White House that caused it to be temporarily cleared. But here, earlier today, executives from the likes of Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, even Eric Schmidt, formerly of Google, were here at the White House to discuss space policy with the president and members of the administration. And during that meeting, President Trump called for a sixth branch of the military governing outer space. Listen.
I'm hereby directing the Department of Defense and Pentagon to immediately begin the process necessary to establish a Space Force as the sixth branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement. We are going to have the Air Force and we are going to have the Space Force, separate but equal. It is going to be something.
Also in that meeting, the president defended the administration's controversial immigration policy, the Department of Justice's zero-tolerance policy that has led to the separation of families at the border, the images of which have been dividing members of the administration, the Republican Party, and even earned criticism from the First Lady, Melania Trump, and former First Lady, Laura Bush. But here's what the president said about that policy today.
The United States will not be a migrant camp, and it will not be a refugee holding facility. Won't be. You look at what's happening in Europe, you look at what's happening in other places. We can't allow that to happen to the United States, not on my watch.
The House is going to consider two separate immigration bills this week. Two senators are going to be here at the White House to discuss border wall funding today, so we'll see where the debate moves from here. Meanwhile, the market is focused on trade fears. White House Counselor Kellyanne Conway yesterday acknowledged that nothing's going to happen for at least another month. That's when these deadlines start, and that's when those tariffs could potentially take effect. But don't tell that to investors who are worried about not only what happens in China, but also potentially with NAFTA, which has a lot of investors spooked today.
We see access to fresh food being the global norm rather than the exception.
We see a world where reducing costs and establishing smarter solutions are not just goals, but critical steps to ensure we leave our world in a better place than we found it.
These aren't people. These are animals. Don't be...
Can you give us a question?
You are fake news.
What comes out of Donald Trump's mouth is, for a president of the United States, unprecedented.
Wait a minute. I'm not finished. I'm not finished, fake news.
So is what goes into his wallet. More than $500 million of income last year for Trump and his family, from their hotels, golf courses, clubs, merchandise sales, from old businesses and newly formed ones. No modern president has profited this way during his time in office. Predecessors like Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, and George W. Bush put their assets in blind trust to avoid conflicts between their financial interests and the public interest. Trump did not. He announced last January he'd step away from his businesses, but only from their management, not their profits.
My two sons are going to be running the company.
As president, he's promoted them with his presence relentlessly. During his first 514 days in office, he visited Trump properties on 159 of them. At least two American embassies abroad have promoted Mar-a-Lago, the president's private club, on their websites. A national park in Virginia has offered Trump wine for sale. Trump aide Kellyanne Conway publicly urged Americans to buy Ivanka Trump's products.
I'm going to give a free commercial here. Go buy it today, everybody. You can find it online.
Explaining the popularity of Trump's Washington hotel, Conway said customers look at it as a piece of the president. As demand rose, the Trump Organization raised prices. Mar-a-Lago, which Trump calls the Winter White House, doubled its membership fee to $200,000. Trump International Hotel in Washington, whose managers promote it as a destination for diplomats, raised room rates by almost 60%. Many who could benefit from Trump's decisions are happy to pay. That includes representatives of countries such as Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Kuwait, and Georgia. It includes lobbyists and executives from industries such as oil, high-tech, real estate, and mining. In amounts large and small, Trump takes in money from political allies and from the government he leads. The Republican National Committee rents space in Trump Tower in New York. So does the Pentagon. So does China's largest bank. The government of Qatar this spring paid $6.5 million for an apartment in Trump World Tower, joining the governments of Saudi Arabia, India, and Afghanistan there. Trump businesses overseas have gotten foreign government help, too. China is reportedly lending $500 million to a Trump-linked development project in Indonesia. China has also approved dozens of trademarks for Trump family businesses since he won the presidency. The White House notes that Congress exempted the president from conflict of interest statutes.
I think he has no conflicts. By law, he can't have conflicts.
But his ability to profit is not unlimited. In two emoluments clauses, the Constitution forbids the president from taking money from individual states or from foreign governments. Responding to those restrictions, the Trump Organization has pledged to donate profits derived from foreign entities to the U.S. Treasury. In 2017, that donation was $151,000, less than 0.5% of the $40 million in hotel income the president reported. A federal lawsuit filed by Democratic members of Congress and another filed by the governments of Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia accused the president of violating the emoluments clauses. While those cases wait for trial, the power of the presidency remains a major financial asset for Trump. The stars have all aligned, his son Eric said last year. I think our brand is the hottest it's ever been.
The value of capital is to create not just wealth, but things that matter. Morgan Stanley, capital creates change.
CNBC's Kayla Tausche's got all the details for us on this elevating trade dispute. She's in Washington for us today. Kayla.
Hey, Wilfred, the principals on trade at the White House are going to be meeting throughout this week to finalize a plan that is intended to limit Chinese investments in sensitive U.S. technology. There are still some divisions among administration officials on the scope of some of these limits, on the ownership levels that they should apply to, and a potential look at outbound U.S. investment into China. So we will see what these administration officials decide over the course of this week. The White House confirms Larry Kudlow is back at work today after suffering a heart attack a couple of weeks ago. So we will see whether that shifts the dynamic in the room ideologically at all. I'm told these will be implemented without comment from companies or stakeholders. So that is interesting, too. And this comes as just a few days ago, China's president warned about 20 Western CEOs that they will not turn the other cheek when it comes to fighting back against the U.S. The administration has said that its goal is to lower tariff barriers worldwide, to get to a zero-tariff world. But it certainly seems like there are increased tariffs worldwide in the meantime. And that's something that Goldman Sachs chief economist Jan Hatzius warned about in a note earlier today. He said that the proposed tariffs that are currently on the table will only have a modest effect on growth worldwide, only about 0.1 to 0.2% in a detraction to global GDP. But he did say that the risk lies in escalation. He says a multilateral trade war in which everyone imposes a tariff on everyone else would lead to higher world inflation, a tighter monetary policy, and slower growth. The negative effects would be amplified if equity prices dropped around the world. I'm told by sources that from March 22nd, when this deadline of this Saturday was put in place for the Treasury Department to look at investment restrictions on China, the Treasury has been keeping a close eye on what the U.S. stock market does in response. We'll see whether they're taking today's move into account as well. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, and Kayla, there's obviously been a lot of different information out of the White House today with Secretary Mnuchin saying, oh, no, it's not just about China. It's about everybody. I'm not sure that's reassuring the markets. If anything, that makes them think, well, wait a minute, this is broader than we realized.
Well, certainly the mandate of Treasury is broader than just looking at China, and the purview of the current legislation that's pending on Capitol Hill looking at foreign investment into the U.S. is broader than just China. But what they are doing this week is intended to look specifically at China. I mean, there's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. That is what the White House said back in March. That's what the White House said back in May. So while they are saying that they're going to be taking an umbrella approach to this, the intention is to hit back at China.
We see a world where reducing costs and establishing smarter solutions are not just goals, but critical steps to ensure we leave our world in a better place than we found it.
It's a call the president has made frequently over the course of his presidency and campaign. He's frustrated with the WTO. He doesn't feel it serves the United States, and he doesn't understand why the U.S. is still in it. But the important line in the Axios piece, which I've also heard from people inside the White House, is this. Advisors never put in place a policy process to take the idea seriously. That can change, but that is still the case for now. It does underscore Trump's disdain for multilateral deals and institutions, NATO, G7, NAFTA, TPP. And yesterday in Wisconsin, he again defended his approach that has hardened toward allies like Europe.
If you don't want our agricultural product, we don't want your cars. I mean, you know, it's not such a complicated formula. And they're going to come back and they're going to say, let's talk. Frankly, don't tell them I said it, but they already have. Don't ever tell them I said that. You'll screw up my negotiations.
The White House declined to elaborate on what discussions are taking place. Ways and Means Chair Kevin Brady, though, told reporters yesterday this. He said, quote, "My understanding is there is a lot of discussion behind the scenes. President Trump's asked us to have patience and back him when he takes on this challenge. And I think Republicans clearly are. But without an exemption or exclusion process to take that burden off us, manufacturers, it gets tougher each week." He's talking there about the tariff strategy that the president implemented a few weeks ago. Meanwhile, tariff plans from other allies appear set to go ahead. Canada is going to be making an announcement today at 11 a.m. And White House officials say they're operating as if the tariffs on China next Friday will take effect. We'll see whether that's barring any last-minute deal that could be struck, Brian, in the next few days.
Get rid of musty odors and excess moisture with Damp Rid.
So, my closet, it's full of excess moisture. The clothes start to stink. Damp Rid takes care of that.
Damp Rid moisture absorbers eliminate the excess moisture that causes musty odors and last for up to 60 days.
More information about Anthony Kennedy's retirement. He said Justice Kennedy did go to the White House to meet with the president. They spent about half an hour talking, and President Trump said he asked the justice for his recommendations for a replacement. They discussed the fact that there is a list of 25 potential candidates that was created during the Trump campaign. Let's bring in Major Garrett, our chief White House correspondent. Major's joining us from the North Lawn of the White House. Major, for our viewers just joining us, tell us a little bit about this list and its origins.
So it started off as a general list of preferences. I can't remember the exact number when it first came out. I think it was like 13, 14, or 15. Then it became a much more defined list of 20. Then there was one name added, 21, in September, October of 2016. And that's when then candidate Trump said, "This is my list. And if I'm elected, the person I nominate to fill the seat of Antonin Scalia will come from this list. Judge me, judge my candidacy, and if you will, judge the future of the court based on this list." As he was president, that list grew to 25, and the president reaffirmed that that list is central to his already established vetting process. And when the president in the East Room of the White House, very early in his presidency, before the end of January, announced Neil Gorsuch as his nominee, he described his selection process, justifiably, as the most transparent in American history. Why? Because never before had there been a list. And that list was followed. Neil Gorsuch was on that second list of 20, then 21. So whoever this nominee is, and the president said the process of vetting the next person has begun immediately, I would anticipate that name being put forth within a week or two at the most, is coming from this list of 25. And then, as the president was asked, well, why not wait to have an intervening election? No, we haven't really thought about that. There's not one chance that this White House or the sympathetic and in solidarity Senate Republican leadership will wait. As soon as the nominee is announced, the confirmation process will begin, and you can be absolutely certain there will be a confirmation vote before the midterm elections to fill the seat, now just made vacant by the retirement of Justice Anthony Kennedy.
And we heard the president mention that there are some frontrunners that are very well known. He even said that the president of Portugal may know the names of some of those frontrunners, but gave no further details. Now, on to Russia. The president was asked about the upcoming summit with President Putin of Russia. I'm wondering, Major, how much is Russian interference in the U.S. election going to be hanging over this summit, do you think?
It will hang over it for certain. And when the president was asked, what are you going to talk about? Syria, Ukraine, some other things? Another golden opportunity for the president to say something about Russian interference in the 2016 election, thoroughly established. There is a body of evidence that is growing in significance, that there is at the margin some mechanisms by which, using the same tactics, Russians are trying to interfere with the conversation about the 2018 election. Not a word said from the president. There are numerous opportunities. This is just the latest in which he served up on a platter the opportunity to say something. Just recognize it first, criticize it second about Russian interference in American politics. The president, again, let that opportunity lapse and go by the wayside. So whether they discuss it directly or not, it will overhang because it is a serious issue. It's got bipartisan concern. There are numerous ongoing investigations, some of them just technical and tactical. How did it happen? What were the methods? Some of them with potential criminal aspects to them, the Robert Mueller investigation, certainly, about this issue. Lots of people have generalized and very sharp concerns about this, and given opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to both note that and to criticize it, President Trump has let almost every one of those opportunities pass him by. What's interesting is it will happen sometime in mid-July on the other side of the president's trip to Belgium for the NATO summit. The two places most likely to be the host, Vienna, Austria, Helsinki, Finland. People I've talked to believe it's more likely to be in Helsinki, Finland, for geographic reasons, ease of the president getting there, ease of President Putin getting there, and then getting back to Russia as the World Cup goes on. So, can't say for certain, but I would say if you were to have a hunch, Helsinki, Finland would probably be the place this is likely to be.
And the one thing the president did say on the topic of Russia was simply that they're doing a great job with the World Cup. Nothing we heard there about Russian interference. Now, coming back to Justice Kennedy, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said earlier that they'd consider the eventual nominee as early as this fall. What do you make of that timeline, and can Democrats do anything to block this?
They can slow it down a little bit, but they can't block it. That's just a fact. There are some procedural mechanisms by which you can slow things down, gum up the works a little bit. But I guarantee you, if Republicans need to have overnight sessions or weekend sessions just to run out the clock, they'll do it. Whatever is required under Senate procedures to get the hearings held, the vote through the committee, which is the Judiciary Committee, and then the floor vote to have confirmation, Senate Republicans will do it to get this justice on the bench, to replace Kennedy, and to have a second Trump person on the Supreme Court, thereby establishing a substantial legacy already before the end of his second year in office, not only on the Supreme Court, but I think Jan made reference to this. If she didn't, I will make the point now. No president in American history has nominated and seen confirmed more appellate justices on the federal bench than President Trump. That is another way in which he is reshaping the federal judiciary, not just at the Supreme Court, but at the appellate courts. And there are lots of Trump nominees that have been submitted and approved for district court positions as well. So already there is a Trump legacy on the federal bench. A second Supreme Court nominee will solidify that legacy even more.
Major, do you think this will embolden the president's policymaking, knowing that two of the justices on the bench were handpicked by him?
I think that's something that Democrats will suggest, and you have to wait and see how things shake out. The president and the Supreme Court decision on the travel ban said something that I think was important, separate from who Donald Trump is and what Donald Trump said about immigration policy. The Supreme Court said, long before Donald Trump, the Constitution of the United States invested tremendous authority in the President of the United States and the office of the presidency to deal with immigration policy generally and very specifically to have wide latitude on questions of immigration policy as they related to national security. The Supreme Court sort of went out of its way to say this was a pre-existing constitutional prerogative of every president. Regardless of who the occupant is now and regardless of what that occupant said, either as a candidate or as president, this authority has always been there. So the question for the Supreme Court was, did Travel Ban 3.0 fall within that long-established legal authority? The Supreme Court, by a 5-4 narrow majority, I grant you, said yes, it did. So to ask the question, was the president emboldened in the first place? No, he thought he had that problem. He thought he had that power. And it turns out, under the third variation of the travel ban, in fact, he did. If he had tried that on Travel Ban 1 and Travel Ban 2, he would have failed, because the Supreme Court's decision made it pretty clear, though it didn't say so explicitly, neither one of those first two travel ban variations would have passed constitutional scrutiny. So that in itself is an example of how the president didn't necessarily feel emboldened by the existing structure of the Supreme Court and had to rework his own policy. So every president has to look at existing law and the way the Supreme Court has historically dealt with cases. And plenty of presidents have learned that just because you nominate and see confirmed on your watch someone on the Supreme Court doesn't mean they're going to be, and it doesn't mean they ought to be, a reliable vote on behalf of your agenda. Lots of presidents have been burned by that. More of them Republican than Democrat in recent times, but that's always something presidents have in the back of their mind. So I'm not sure I would be prepared to say that the president would or would not feel emboldened. My suggestion is Democrats will make that argument, and it'll be up for the voters to decide whether they believe it or not.
Well, Major, thank you so much for that analysis.
If you can only travel suffering from motion sickness or feeling drowsy from motion sickness relief, then wanting to stay home is only natural. Fortunately, there's non-drowsy naturals, Dramamine's first non-drowsy offering. The proven natural ginger dosage required for preventing and treating nausea and vomiting due to motion sickness without drowsiness. That's how to travel. Non-drowsy naturals from the leaders in motion sickness relief, Dramamine.
Welcome back. National Security Advisor John Bolton heading to Moscow next week to arrange a potential meeting between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Also, Energy Secretary Rick Perry will also host Russia's energy minister for a meeting in Washington next week. Let's bring in South Carolina Republican Congressman Ralph Norman. Good to see you, Congressman. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Already we're seeing the media criticism, Russia, 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 and why is President Trump wanting to meet with Putin? Your reaction to that?
Well, you know, it's like they've done since this president's been elected. There's no, it's all criticism. He gets no kudos for anything. I think it's great that he's taken the time to meet with Putin. Look what he's done with North Korea. Everything starts with a conversation, and particularly with Russia now. I give him credit for having the courage, in spite of the criticism, to meet with him, and particularly before the G7 conference. Sending John Bolton to Moscow is a great thing for him to do. Bolton is a brilliant strategist. He's a brilliant person that we personally interviewed on Capitol Hill. So I think it's a great thing.
The point is to avoid nuclear war, or North Korea shooting off a nuclear missile, right?
Correct.
Okay. Remember, President. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean I think that's one of the topics they'll be discussing. You know, everybody knows, including President Trump, Putin is no choir boy. Does not have the best interests of the country, and as Nikki Haley and others have said, you deal with him like you deal with a nation that does not have our best interests. Yeah,
you make a great point. Meddling in our election, and is completely wrong. That's what Russia has been doing to us and other countries as well. We want to show again President Obama meeting with Russia's Medvedev, caught on a hot mic saying this. Watch.
This is my last election, I believe. Yeah. After my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah, I understand. I transmit this to Vladimir.
I'll transmit the information to Vladimir. I mean, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? We've showed that in the past. Bring it up again. Go ahead.
Yeah, why did the press not jump on that? I mean, you didn't hear a word about it after Obama said that. They never questioned him. What did he mean by that? Why, after the elections, would he have more leverage or more freedom to do whatever he wanted to do? So it shows you in my mind, the incompetence of ex-President Obama. And now, with a leader like President Trump, you get the feeling like he understands what he's dealing with. He's going to open the dialogue to talk. And I can't see how that's not a good thing.
Peace through strength. Okay, let's move on to this. OPEC agrees to modest hikes in oil supply after Saudi Arabia and Iran made a compromise. Let's take a check of oil prices, up about 20% year to date. Regular gas prices climbing higher versus last year as well. Here's the story, Congressman. What do you make of the president is also tweeting about OPEC and gas prices and oil prices? What's your reaction to what's going on with OPEC?
Well, what OPEC's doing is, I think, is alerting the whole world stage of what's going on with the prices. Nobody's happy with what we're paying here in the country. I think what people are happy with, though, is what we're doing to make our country energy independent and not having to rely on buying natural gas, oil from countries that are enemies of the United States. So That's another reason for President Trump to meet with Vladimir Putin and other leaders that are not necessarily our friends.
I mean, Russia's entire stock market is equal to about the value of Apple's market value. Russia is in a terrible straits with financial difficulties and still always in and out of recession. What kept us out of recession after the financial collapse was our oil industry in a boom time, right? I mean, the president is rolling back the handcuffs on our oil industry. We could be the world's biggest exporter, surpassing Saudi Arabia.
Well, not only that, look at what the encouragement that this president's done with fracking. Look at what he's done in opening up the Keystone Pipeline, Anwar, opening up the 2,000 acres there that hadn't been done since Don Young said in 30 years. So it's all making this country energy independent. It's a national security issue. And I just appreciate the president taking the stance he's doing.
And for Russia, it's like sanctions on steroids. I mean, you have, our oil industry going in like that. Congressman, it's so great to have you on. Thanks for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Get rid of musty odors and excess moisture with Damp Rid.
If your house has moisture problems, Damp Rid fixes it.
I put Damp Rid everywhere there's moisture. It's easy to use and it works great.
Damp Rid moisture absorbers eliminate the excess moisture that causes musty odors and lasts for up to 60 days.
The moisture in this Damp Rid bag means no musty odors on my clothes.
It's amazing how Damp Rid pulls all this moisture out of the air to prevent moisture damage in my basement.
Rid your house of musty odors and excess moisture.
Get rid of dampness with Damp Rid.
We want to direct your attention to the White House, where moments ago President Trump met with the King and Queen of Jordan in the Oval Office. Let's listen in.
I just want to say, while our nations have a very good relationship, we now have a great relationship, but the job you do on a humanitarian basis is fantastic. And I would like to thank you very much.
Sir, thank you. And, sir, if I can thank you and the United States and the people of America for all the support you've given our country. If the rest of the world just took a little bit of your humility and your grace to help us, we'd be in a lot better position. But if it wasn't the United States, just on behalf of myself and my people, thank you so much for all that you've done for us.
Remember, he used the word humility with respect to me, so I am very happy with that word. That's probably the nicest compliment I've been given in a long time. No, the job you do is fantastic, and yes, we do. We spend a lot of money, but we spend a lot of money in a lot of places, and people don't do the job that you do, so I want to thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. No. The executive order was great. It was something that I felt we had to do. We want children staying together. The law has been this law for a long period of time. You would understand this better than most because of the great job you do in your country. No, it was there was a false story, fake news in the New York Times, just the opposite. I wanted to sign that. In fact, I was saying yesterday before I read this phony story in the New York Times that I was very, very happy that I signed that. And it also, it shows, we're all talking about humanity, whether it's what you're doing in Jordan or whether it's what we're doing here. The laws are obsolete. The laws are horrible, having to do with the border, both in terms of security and in terms of taking care of people. President Obama had a big problem. In fact, a lot of the pictures used they thought would be, I guess, I don't know what you folks did. You used pictures from 2014. They were all taken during the Obama administration. But the Bush administration had the same. It's the same laws. They're a disaster. The laws have to be changed. And whether it's North Korea or whether it's so many different things like trade, we're taking care of a lot of problems that should have been taken care of over the years. Well, one of the highest on the list is immigration. And we have to change our laws. We have to make them sensible. They came in to see me last week. They said, we'd like to hire 5,000 more judges. 5,000. You ever hear of a thing like that? Judges. Well, we're appointing 145 judges here, and everyone goes through this extreme vetting process. Talking about 5,000. Where do you find 5,000 people to be judges? And you know what it leads? It leads to graft. It leads to a lot of other things. We want a system where when people come in illegally, they have to go out. And a nice, simple system that works. Mexico holds people for 4 hours, for 5 hours, for 2 hours, and they're gone. We have people for 4, 5, 6 years, and they never leave. So we want to have a great immigration. What we have is very simple. We want strong borders, and we want no crime. Strong borders, we want no crime. The Democrats want open borders, and they don't care about crime. And they don't care about our military. I care about our military. That's what we want, and that's what we're going to get. And we're going to get it sooner than people think. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
What about the Middle East for peace? Thank you.
We're doing very well in the Middle East. We're doing very well in the Middle East, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Press. When do you want to release the Middle East peace plan?
I can only say this, and His Majesty knows we're doing very well in the Middle East. A lot of progress has been made in the Middle East, a lot. And it really started with the end of the horrible Iran deal. That deal was a disaster. And things are a lot different since we ended that. A lot different. Thank you all very much.
All right, everybody. Thank you. We're leaving now. Thank you. Let's leave the room. Please exit.
And that was President Trump welcoming the King and Queen of Jordan to the White House. He was asked by reporters about signing that executive order to end family separation at the border. He said he was happy to sign it, but he did blast the current immigration laws as they stand, saying we want strong borders and no crime, and saying the Democrats want the opposite.
Out of reach? Jason always steps up. Out of stock? He's already one step ahead. Can I give him the 401k he deserves? I can. With Target Date Retirement Series from Capital Group, home of American funds.
Earlier this morning, Axios, a news website, reported that President Trump had told White House officials he wants to withdraw from the World Trade Organization. However, almost immediately, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin disputed the claim. Listen to what he told Maria Bartiromo. Roll tape.
Who's reporting an Axios story is breaking news. It's not right. I won't use our favorite word about the
fake news,
but this is an exaggeration. The president has been clear with us and with others. He has concerns about the WTO. He thinks there's aspects of it that are not fair. He thinks that China and others have used it to their own advantage. But we are focused on free trade. That's what we're focused on, breaking down barriers.
Well, that was pretty clear. Joining us now, Axios Editor-in-Chief Nick Johnson, frequent guest on the program. You heard it. You reported that the president wants to withdraw. Mnuchin says immediately that's an exaggeration and it borders on fake news. And you say what now?
Right. Well, we told the White House we were going to report this. We gave them 12 hours to tell us if we were wrong, and they didn't. And I think it's interesting to say that Mnuchin said it's an exaggeration as opposed to it being completely wrong. Look, no one should be surprised here. Anyone who follows the president's rhetoric on trade since his inauguration, anyone who followed Donald Trump's rhetoric on trade for the last 30 years when he was a private citizen, knows exactly what his true North Star, what he really believes. He thinks American workers and companies are getting a raw deal in the trade regime and currently globally. That's why one of his first acts was to pull out of the TPP. That's why he's renegotiating NAFTA. That's why he started trade wars in Asia and Europe over tariffs. And so it stands to reason that if he believes all these kinds of things, he would certainly be opposed to the international organization that is the foundation for that global trade. No one should be shocked that Donald Trump doesn't like the WTO.
But to be precise, you're quoting White House officials who say he wants to withdraw from the WTO.
This is what he has told people.
Tomorrow morning I'm giving an executive order and we're out.
Well, he would like to, but remember, Donald Trump doesn't follow process on this. He tells people who talk to us a lot of the kinds of things he wants. Why this is important, why it matters, as we say at Axios, is that sometimes the president doesn't follow that process. We reported recently about, remember, the process on steel and aluminum tariffs. These are things that he was saying privately, and then impromptu, one day at the White House in a meeting with reporters, he says, this is what we're doing, 15%, 25%. So I think it's important to understand what the president is saying privately, because sometimes he will buck the process and take action.
I'm not dismissing this, your report at all. I'm not going to do that. But I would suggest that maybe this is just another negotiating position, another negotiating ploy.
And that's perfectly possible. The White House could have told us that's actually what their plan is on that. But I think the important thing here is to look at it in the broader context. When the president says these kinds of things privately, they very often become public. One thing I would say in Axios' defense, in our reporting, you may remember a couple months ago when we had that scoop about what the president was saying privately about Amazon. Remember who confirmed that eventually was true? The president himself, when he went on Twitter and said that Amazon was too powerful and was ripping off the government.
When you were sitting there waiting to do this interview, you saw Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, and you saw the question about fake news. He didn't use the expression himself, but he was pretty close. How did you feel?
It's not fake news, right? I think we're right. We are right. I know we're right. Jonathan Swan has excellent sources in the White House. This is not one person telling us this. There's multiple people who are in the room with the president telling us this. And if you go look at what the reporting we've done in the past that the White House has disputed, it's all been correct.
By the way, by repeating it forcefully, you did not move the market at all. We're still
I hope I'm not moving the market here.
No, you're not. It's still up 240 points. Nick Johnson, we appreciate you being with us, as always. Thanks very much indeed, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Marcy is our plant's legend. She can run a press blindfolded with one hand. Can I give her the 401k she deserves? I can. With Target Date Retirement Series from Capital Group, home of American funds.
The immigration debate is intensifying. The Trump administration defending its zero-tolerance policy of separating immigrant children from adults at the border as lawmakers seek to compromise on a bill that will satisfy President Trump. The House will be voting on 2 of them this week. Mr. Trump wants tighter security and funding for the border wall, tweeting last night that Democrats and Republicans should, quote, get together and work something out. Meanwhile, today at the White House, 2 GOP senators who hold the purse strings will meet with the president. The result of that meeting could determine whether a shutdown could again loom in September, this time over those issues. Meanwhile, the First Lady issuing a rare public statement on policy, saying that, quote, she believes we need to be a country that follows all laws, but also a country that governs with heart, according to her spokeswoman.
There is fear the trade war could escalate and become meaningful in terms of world and global trade, but it's not that right now. The biggest concern is the effect on sentiment and investment, especially that it could undo the positive effects of the corporate tax cuts. Moody's Investor Services writing, quote, the second-order impact of tariff increases would be to dampen currently robust global growth momentum. Fed officials, including Chairman Jerome Powell, say their contacts in industry are telling them it's causing some to question CapEx already.
Concerns about changes in trade policy are rising, I think it's fair to say, and also that you're beginning to hear reports of companies holding off on making investments and hiring people.
And in an interview this morning on Squawk Box, President Trump's top economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, agreed that tariffs have boosted uncertainty.
We are in a period of uncertainty, and that period of uncertainty is visible in some places. You can see it in lumber prices and steel prices and so on. But again, the president's long-run objective is one that I think all economists should share, which is to get, like think about all of the barriers in China. Think about the fact that China is stealing more than $100 billion a year worth of our intellectual property.
Daniel Eikenson from the Cato Institute, in a back-of-the-envelope calculation, says if the president follows through on recent threats and imposes more tariffs on autos and auto parts, which would raise the total under tariffs to $800 billion, the extra profits from the corporate tax cuts, quote, could be entirely wiped out for the manufacturing sector, end quote.
Stock selling off in Asia and Europe. We have complete team coverage from around the world. Jumana Bersetti is standing by in London, but let's begin with Nancy Hungerford in Singapore. Give us some percentages, too, Nancy, just so we can compare apples to apples, because we're down about 1.4%. I figure the Asian markets go down 3%, then we're winning, aren't we? I don't know. Is that the way to look at this?
Well, Joe, it depends on which Asian markets you want to focus on here, because we did see broad-based selling across the region. For the likes of the Nikkei 225, off about 1.7%. But if you want to talk the bigger numbers, take a look at the greater China markets. It may not surprise you that the brunt of the selling really took place there. Keep in mind, too, that these markets were on holiday yesterday, so they did get their first chance to react to the first round of tariff threats coming from President Trump, that big $50 billion number, and then now reacting to a latest threat for perhaps additional tariffs on $200 billion worth of goods. Then now China fighting back during the session. That did see a further weakening of some of these indices here.
The mood in Europe is not that much different, to be honest, and you can see it as a sea of red as far as European equities are concerned. The main underperformer, though, is the German index. The ZDAX is down 1.3%. And just to give you an idea, in just 2 days alone, the German index is down about 3%. So that gives you an idea of some of the turmoil also back home that is permeating there as far as Angela Merkel's future is concerned. One of the outperformers today is FTSE 100, still down 0.6%, but then again, that's somewhat aided by the weaker currency. So a weaker sterling there is helping that export-oriented index somewhat. We've also got FTSE MIB underperforming to the tune of about 0.75 percentage points, and the Spanish index down 0.8% as well.
Goldman Sachs CEO Lloyd Blankfein, he has been making comments at the Economic Club of New York, and some very interesting ones, Wilfred, regarding what's going on with China and trade.
Yeah, and I'd say, Scott, overall, in fact, he's relatively sanguine about these escalating trade concerns, certainly saying it's not his style to be doing this, but he wasn't too concerned. Here are some of his comments on trade.
I don't think we're in a suicide pact on this. There's a lot of frustration with China from here. I know that China is very frustrated with the sudden aggressiveness of U.S. policy, but anybody who has transacted with China appreciates the potential of China, has had good experiences in China and frustrating experiences in China. It's not my style, but if what you want to show is, if you want to give somebody an incentive to see the world from your point of view, it doesn't help to remind them of your negotiating position if it's a better one. And the fact is, if we go tit for tat, by the time you get to 100, they run out of things to apply a tariff to, and we don't. And so if you want to make that point, you make that point. Now, that's what you would do if you were crazy and really wanted to end free trade.
Here earlier today, executives from the likes of Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, even Eric Schmidt, formerly of Google, were here at the White House to discuss space policy with the president and members of the administration. And during that meeting, President Trump called for a sixth branch of the military governing outer space. Listen.
I'm hereby directing the Department of Defense and Pentagon to immediately begin the process necessary to establish a Space Force as the sixth branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement. We are going to have the Air Force and we are going to have the Space Force, separate but equal. It is going to be something.
Big business now weighing in on the Trump administration's controversial border policy. J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, in an internal memo to employees obtained by CNBC, said separating children from their parents is cruel and contrary to American values. Dimon said that his heart goes out to those impacted. Separately, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella sending a letter to his employees calling the policy, in his words, abhorrent and cruel, as well as abusive. Dimon and Nadella join other CEOs, including Mark Zuckerberg and Tim Cook, who've spoken out against the Trump administration's border policy.
Iger did make a comment a few moments ago about the progress he says they've been making regarding regulators on that front. Take a listen.
Fox is in the driver's seat regarding the 61% that they do not control. We've been working with regulatory authorities, not just in the United States, but in jurisdictions across the world now for 6 months. And we've made a lot of progress toward obtaining the regulatory approvals that are necessary. And that includes supplying regulatory authorities with a tremendous amount of information, basically heeding their requests for all sorts of documentation regarding this acquisition and the potential impact that it has on markets across the world. This itself represents, in itself, a meaningful head start.
Meaningful head start, Jim. How much does that timeline matter?
Geez, I don't know. I keep coming back to what David said. I'm so happy that he said it, which is that this could be over sooner than people realize. You know, these are not a lot of moving parts. There's an asset. You raise your price until you can't say it's accretive, include this most recent hassle, and then you're done. And I think that neither one of these companies is in a suicide pact. There's a sense David, I don't know if you feel this way, but when I listen to the media commentary and I listen to the analyst commentary, it's a suicide pact. I mean, everybody loses. It's a big game of chicken and both cars go over.
Meantime, everybody's talking about big changes in the Dow. General Electric is out, and of course, Walgreens is in. Let's bring in Art Casher to talk about it. And Art, I know we all agree it makes sense for GE to come out because of the low price, but do you feel like I do that Walgreens was not the obvious choice to go in the Dow?
Yeah, but I think part of that is what has been talked about in Wall Street as kind of the Warren Buffett problem. You know, Warren Buffett does not want to split his stock, and he's being emulated by hundreds and hundreds of other managers, so that the Netflixes of the world, the Amazons of the world, in the old days when a stock got to be about 100, it gets split 4 for 1, and you'd get it in there. So the problem with replacing GE is that if you put one of these mega monsters in an Amazon or something like that, it would absolutely swallow the whole average because it is based on price, not on capitalization.
While at the same time being sure that we have a very powerful, very strong border, and border security will be equal, if not greater, than previously. So we're going to have strong, very strong borders, but we're going to keep the families together. I didn't like the sight or the feeling of families being separated. Is a problem that's gone on for many years, as you know, for many administrations, and we're working very hard on immigration. It's been just left out in the cold. People haven't dealt with it.
The Office of Management and Budget here at the White House just releasing a dramatic government reorganization proposal. A lot of details here are new to us, but one that has been rumored to be coming is now included in this proposal, which is the merging of the Departments of Education and Labor. The White House suggests that by merging these two massive federal bureaucracies, remember, the Department of Education was just created back in 1980. It employs about 4,000 people. Merging that with the Department of Labor would save on some redundancies and also really focus on creating the workforce of the future. They're also proposing here creating a new Department of Economic Growth. They're saying here that they would consolidate federal economic assistance resources of a new Bureau of Economic Growth at the Department of Commerce. It would drive economic growth in communities across the nation. So they're arguing here that taxpayers will receive a better return on their investments through improved outcome measurements. But there are a whole host of proposals here that are being listed by the White House, including a sustainable postal service. They're talking about cybersecurity workforce shortage, a whole host of ways of rearranging the federal government bureaucracy in ways that they feel are more oriented toward the 21st century. White House just announcing that Melania Trump, the First Lady, has arrived in Texas, where she's going to be touring some facilities along the border, including, as you see there, live pictures coming in of the First Lady in Texas. We're told that this facility is the Lutheran Social Services of the South facility in McAllen, Texas. It's an HHS facility. She's going to be visiting here with some dignitaries and high-ranking officials, but they say that the First Lady is going to be meeting with doctors, social workers, and others that provide medical and educational services. We don't have any names yet of exactly who the First Lady is meeting with, but they put out a statement just a few moments ago from the White House, from the East Wing, explaining what the First Lady's goals are here. And they're saying that she is there to thank law enforcement and social services providers for their hard work, also to lend support and hear more on how the administration can build upon the already existing efforts to reunite children with their families. And so much focus over the past 48 hours or so on Melania Trump and her views of this policy by the Trump administration of separating certain children from their families when they come across the border illegally. That was something that the president said yesterday he took into consideration in signing the executive order that he signed yesterday to stop that practice. Melania Trump was said to be behind the scenes very influential in pushing the president to that decision, reversing course on a major policy initiative of this administration. We don't often see this president reversing course on much of anything. This is a double-down presidency, not a back-down presidency, but we saw some backing down yesterday.
I may have to sit down right away because the press conference is about to get started here, but either way, you guys are correct. We are expecting an output increase. Now, it may not come in the form of a hard number. We may not get a number in the announcement, 1 million barrels. What it's probably going to be, guys, is a percentage reduction in the reduction, if that makes sense. Remember, they're operating under an output cut already. The OPEC nations plus another 10, call it the 24, if you will, ROPEC, or whatever you want to use. They're going to probably, what they say, return to what they call full compliance, which basically means go back to the original cuts of 1.2 million barrels a day. They're at 1.8 plus now. So what you're going to get is probably another 600 100,000 to 1 million barrels a day added to the market. But they're not going to say that. They're not going to, we're adding 1 million, guys. They're just going to say, we're going to reduce the cuts by this much. That way Iran can get out of here saving some face, because Iran wants to stick by the original deal. That's probably the hard deal that Saudi Arabia and Iran had to drive late into the night. Last night, you can see, obviously, the market does not believe that whatever we get here today is going to be enough to keep prices down. So President Trump may not be too happy about that. I know all the oil service stocks are higher today, along with Brent crude and WTI. I am going to sit down because I don't feel like getting arrested. The press conference is about ready to start. I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, Carl, that's right. We're just getting this opinion handed down from the court just now. It's written by Chief Justice Roberts, and it looks like they're siding here with Timothy Carpenter, the petitioner here, who is working in this case against the United States government. This was a case where Carpenter was involved in an alleged robbery. The United States government prosecutors were able to get cell phone records based on going to the cell phone company. And the question is whether or not that violates the Fourth Amendment to do it without the warrant. It appears here, just in going through this case very quickly, that the government here, the Supreme Court here, is siding with Carpenter here. They're saying we decline to grant the state unrestricted access to a wireless carrier's database of physical location information in light of the deeply revealing nature of that, its depth, breadth, and comprehensive reach, and the inescapable and automatic nature of its collection. The fact that such information is gathered by a third party does not make it any less deserving of Fourth Amendment protection. That's protection against unwarranted search and seizure. The government's acquisition, they say, of the cell site records here was a search under that amendment. So they're reversing a judgment of the Court of Appeals here and remanding the case, Carl. So a win here for the Fourth Amendment purists who say that cell phone data should be protected by the Fourth Amendment, even if it's being held by the wireless carrier off-site, and they don't need to get a warrant to search the individual or his possessions, Carl.
Once again, a decision that pivots around how technology is evolving and affecting all of our lives. Eamon, thank you for that.
Get rid of musty odors and excess moisture with Damp Rid.
So, my closet, it's full of excess moisture. The clothes start to stink. Damp Rid takes care of that.
Damp Rid moisture absorbers eliminate the excess moisture that causes musty odors and last for up to 60 days.
I'm Brooke Silva-Braga. Thanks so much for joining us on this Friday. A lot more to discuss, especially on immigration. President Trump today basically saying don't bother to House Republicans as they struggle to pass a comprehensive immigration bill that would meet the president's border demands as well as address the separation of families. Now, this comes after House leaders delayed a vote on what the Republicans called a compromise bill until next week. A more conservative bill already failed to pass the House yesterday. Now, this morning, the president tweeted Republicans should stop wasting their time on immigration until after we elect more senators and congressmen and women in November. Of course, the president has long blamed Democrats for immigration problems, but today's tweet is a change from what he's been saying previously about passing legislation.
That's the Democrats' law. We can change it tonight. We can change it right now. It's so sad. And it can be taken care of quickly, beautifully, and we'll have safety. And all we need is good legislation, and we can have it taken care of. It's a very unfair situation, and we're going to stop it. We're going to have laws by the time, as soon as I can do it. So we're going to work very hard with Mike Pence and with everybody else in this room. We're going to work very hard to see if we can solve the immigration problem.
For more on all this, I want to bring in Niall Stanage. He is a White House columnist for The Hill. Good to see you. First off, the why. The president has been so reluctant to reverse himself on anything. Why was this case different?
Well, I did a fair bit of reporting on that myself, and there were a number of different factors.
That's why I asked you this as a question.
Very kind. So one White House official noted to me that the First Lady, Melania Trump, had made her views clear to her husband over a period of days. That's more than we initially thought. We had known that she had sent a tweet, but she seems to have consistently made that point. Ivanka Trump was purportedly also very worried about this story, thought it reflected very poorly on her father's administration. In addition to that, I mean, there were obviously very many emotionally potent images, including the one that was reflected on the Time magazine cover that you showed a couple of moments ago, that engendered, I think, or put a point on already very critical media coverage, clearly elicited a very strong response from people, you know, in the nation generally.
The president knows a bad image when he sees one.
He does, yeah. He's someone who has obviously spent a lot of time in television before he entered his political career fairly late in his life. He knows the power of television. He knows the power of mass media. He knows that, as we say, a picture can be worth 1,000 words, and all of the pictures here were telling a very bad story for him and his administration.
Okay, let's talk legislation now. Last night, the president reportedly told House Republicans we need to pass this compromise bill. Now he tweets out early this morning, don't waste your time. What do we make of that?
What we make of that is that it goes to a problem that Republicans in Washington have had with the president all through his tenure, and that is that they're just not sure where he stands. And when you get into the weeds of legislation, particularly on a complicated issue like immigration, that unnerves Republicans. They don't know whether he is going to have their back if they take a difficult vote from their point of view. It goes all the way back, you may remember, Brooke, the healthcare debate, where the president at one time held a celebration for a bill passed by the House that he then subsequently derided as cruel. Those kind of patterns breed mistrust even among members of his own party.
Well, let's get ourselves into a little bit of the weeds of what this bill that the House is trying to pass next week would do. What is in this bill?
Okay, so it goes to the 4 pillars that President Trump has based his own immigration policy on. One is protection for the so-called Dreamers, people who were protected by the DACA program under President Obama. The other side of it is $25 billion for border security, in other words, perceived to be President Trump's wall. And then the other couple of matters go to the diversity visa lottery, which President Trump wants to end, and some sense of curbing family-based immigration, which of course opponents call chain migration. But I think the 2 crucial points are the path to citizenship for Dreamers. That's very controversial with Conservatives, and the money for the border wall, which Democrats are adamantly against so far.
And is this a compromise some Democrats could get behind?
It's difficult because this issue is so emotionally charged at the moment. While the child separation issue is a separate issue, it has, I think, poisoned the well for a possibility of compromise. People are so angry about this, particularly on the Liberal side of the equation, that it makes any move by Democrats to reach common ground with Republicans very problematic with their own supporters.
So in that sense, the president's tweet this morning could be right, that nothing can get passed unless the Republicans have a red wave in the fall. I wonder if you have an impression of how these images and this issue is cutting as we look forward to the midterms. Is this good for Democrats? Is it good for Republicans? Is it hard to say?
I think it's better for Democrats than Republicans. I mean, clearly there were a lot of Republicans who criticised the president more than we've seen on any other issue to my recollection. I think it also energises the Liberal voters who have in previous midterms not come out in such big numbers. So in that sense, I think that it is good for Democrats. Sometimes immigration has been argued to play to President Trump's base, but the polling figures we saw on the separations issue suggested that there was very, very widespread opposition to it. Support was only running at 25, 26, 27%. That's really down to the hard core of his base. A lot of other people seemed very adamantly opposed.
Okay. Niall Stanage, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brooke.
It's my iPhone 6. Can we fix this phone tonight?
You can turn off the performance management feature.
Battery throttling.
Or you can just upgrade it.
Whoa, I'm moving on.
The super-fast Galaxy S9. Available now.
Team coverage that we have on the immigration battle. Tom Yama is standing by with those images at the border. But first, our chief White House correspondent, John Karl, starts us off with the president's rally overnight. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Robin. While the president talks tough on illegal immigration this morning, his zero-tolerance policy for families that are caught crossing the border illegally is effectively on hold. For now, at least, it's a return to a policy that he long derided as catch and release.
We're defending our borders because if you don't have borders, you don't have a country.
Confusion surrounding the president's executive order last week ending family separation has, at least for now, put the president's zero-tolerance policy on hold when it comes to families with children. Customs and Border Protection now says they won't refer any more parents for prosecution until they figure out how to keep families together during